For my classroom observation assignment, I chose to attend and observe a Korean kindergarten class at Maple Bear Academy in Bundang, South Korea. The teacher, Miss A, has been in Korea with Maple Bear for over 5 years and has a strong understanding of the curriculum and student needs. As a long-standing teacher in South Korea, I personally strongly believe in Paulo Freire's belief that education is not an awning for people to hide under, but it is instead a serious position through which responsibility, scientific preparation, and a taste for teaching we can contribute to the gradual transformation of learners into strong presences in the world. Having witnessed Miss A's creative and energetic lessons in the past, combined with her own experiences in teaching in Korea, I felt that she most closely matched this definition for ESL teachers and was thus asked to volunteer for this observation. As mentioned earlier, the classroom consists of 14 Korean kindergarten students, aged 6 to 7 internationally or 7 to 8 in Korean age, all of which display a strong level of English proficiency for their age, up to being able to construct their own sentences with little input from the teacher. All have traveled abroad and lived in a Western English-speaking country for at least a year. All students have to have passed a proficiency test before enrolling into class. The students enjoy hands-on and interactive activities that integrate exploration and observational skills. As Ms. A herself stated, quote, "At the kindergarten and grade 1 levels, there tends to be a lot of hands-on activities and less desk work. Therefore, the children really enjoy coming to school, singing, and learning about new things." End quote. This approach also helps build their motivation to learn, as most ELLs at this age often do not have an intrinsic motivation to acquire English. The reason most of these children come to acquire English at Maple Bear is because their parents hope that it will be beneficial for future career development and academic achievement. As for the classroom's personality, Miss A states, quote, "The classroom atmosphere tends to be laid back. There are some louder, talkative children, so sometimes it gets a little rowdy. At times, controlled chaos. My personal style in the classroom is about positive reinforcement. I also enjoy talking with the children one-on-one and working in small groups." End quote. In the classroom each day, there are times the children will complete tasks independently, as part of a whole group, in small groups chosen by teachers, and at times in small groups chosen by the children. Level of participation depends on the activity. Typically, Miss A stated that 1/3 will always participate. Certain children are not very comfortable sharing in a whole group. If the class has been discussing or working with a specific idea or theme all week, then by Friday there is usually about 100% participation. In regards to the setting, English's main purpose within Korea is for career development and advancement. While in the school, English is, however, mainly used as communication. The teaching staff is split about evenly between North American native speakers and Korean natives. The North American natives use English for all communication at school. The Korean natives use mostly English, and the management is entirely Korean with one North American native speaker, Ms. Carey. The observed class has one Korean native speaker, Mrs. Sarah, who is also the TP and is in for additional in-class support, and the class itself lasts for 40 minutes. At Maple Bear, there are certain resources that are communal, such as tissue paper, paint, lamination, brushes, binds, etc. On top of that, each classroom teacher has a monthly budget for non-communal items. We are also very lucky because the parents at the school are very involved and are always willing to send in food for cooking classes and recycled resources like empty tissue rolls. Ms. A describes the physical and socio-cultural environment as such, quote, "Our classroom has many nice large whiteboards for writing and long walls for hanging our other resources. We also have closets, shoe cubbies, sinks, tables and chairs in groups, supply baskets, appropriate areas for toothbrushes, snack cups, water bottles, etc. There is one computer for 3 teachers which is shared. At our school, there are directors, principals, team leaders, head teachers, teaching partners, and classroom teachers. We have a mix of new and experienced teachers. There's a lot of support and sharing of ideas and materials." End quote. New children to Maple Bear also always participate in a level test for the appropriate grade. Level tests consist of speaking, writing, reading, and listening. Each year, at the end of the year, each grade completes a level test as well, also consisting of speaking, writing, reading, and listening. During the school year, students receive different assessments and feedback from their teachers, which include weekly reading assessments, unit thematic assessments, math unit assessments, term progress reports 3 times a year, and also parent-teacher interviews, also 3 times a year. Since Maple Bear is a Canadian early childhood education center, the school follows the Ontario Education Standards and Curriculum instead of the Common Core Standards as implemented in U.S. curriculum. Before the observation could occur, both Miss A and I had to prepare our own materials. Miss A, of course, chose materials for her lesson based upon how they fit the students' needs. Thus, they needed to be interactive and allow the students a chance to explore and participate as a whole. Time and curriculum unit goals were also heavily considered in the evaluation of materials. For the criteria development for the observation, I had worked with my group closely through a democratic process and the evaluation of content presented in the book Materials and Methods in ELT. We came up with 6 different criteria, including one with a social justice focus, for which was used for Miss A's classroom observation. The goal was for students to review and enforce what we were learning this unit, while also building motivation for the students. The most important thing the students could learn was not only the oceans, but also how to develop a letter journal activity, a skill which would be extended to the other half of the class during the next learning center. As Miss A had earlier stated, her goals were to create a creative, interactive activities that allowed students to explore and participate as a whole. This was noticeable in her choice of activities for the day. She included an individual activity, labeling oceans and continents to review what was learned, a group activity, and an ocean song to help build on knowledge by detailing different traits of the different oceans, and small group activities, which were the 2 learning centers at the end. The students interacted well with Miss A during the song and labeling parts, and interest remained steady during the learning centers as they required more desk work than interactive participation. Student interest was sustained throughout, as it seems the students were already interested in the topic, though there's a possibility that it could have been enhanced by the ocean traits song. At the start of the lesson, Miss A said, "We talked about ooh sounds this week. What else are we talking about this week?" And the students answered with the topic of the lesson. This was a simple yet effective way for the students to recall retained information and develop the context for the day's lesson. During the class, Miss A would continue to provide prompts such as this, revealing her role as a prompter during class. Other roles she demonstrated include participant, as she sang during the Ocean Traits song, a resource, as she provided different sentence structures and word meanings in the Learning Center's journal activity, an assessor during the Ocean Continents Labeling Review, and as finally a role as an organizer who set up the class activities and learning centers. Despite the amount of explanation necessary for all of these roles and activities, Miss A managed to maintain a roughly 60-40 teacher talk to student talk ratio, with most of her talk resulting from the need for prompting, directions, explanations, and praise. Such explanations often consisted of simple words repeated often and spoken clearly with good use of visual aids such as the whiteboard, map, or PC. However, the Math Learning Center with the Korean teaching partner showed some student confusion over missed directions, but issues were kept to a minimum and students were still able to complete their assigned task. As mentioned, Miss A's teacher talk consisted of a lot of praise to provide positive emotional support. Phrases such as good job, very good, and let's all pat ourselves on the back were used at the successful completion of any task, and a happy face chart was used to reward and keep track of excellence. Besides the happy face chart, other materials used included a map to locate and label oceans and continents, which was very effective in identifying and recognizing terms, a PC for the ocean songs to tell about ocean traits and locations, a math book for math exercises, a journal to write letters to a company to protect ocean wildlife, a brown bag to pull out colors for probability, and a whiteboard to write down letter prompts, such as Dear President, for their journal and letter writing activity. The activities, as displayed in this video's breakdown of the lesson's activities, were only somewhat pertinent to the topic. The Math Learning Center was a required subject by the school's curriculum, to my knowledge, but did not relate to the lesson objective. However, the journal entry, where students wrote to a company about protecting ocean wildlife, was useful in understanding, expanding, and applying knowledge of oceans and their inhabitants. Overall, Miss A displayed a strong ability to manage the class with only a few speed bumps during the lesson. The warm-up was facilitated by the teacher, and many students participated, but the slow startup of the PC song hindered the transition to the Ocean Trade song. Thanks to our time management and clear expectations, students were clear about what to do and expect. Thus, there was few questions or few unexpected actions. The learning centers were explained clearly and monitored by the Korean teaching partner as well, who stayed in front and center of her group, and Miss A, who walked around to interact with students. Besides prompting and praise, Miss A would provide other forms of feedback for her students, including supportive reformulation of student utterances by rewording awkward sentences in terms like down west, southern ocean. She also presented responsive and supporting attitudes to students' questions, having accepted all questions presented to her and answered them immediately. Her general friendliness towards her students, as well as use of varied styled activities, praise, and a happy chart, created a very warm and motivating environment where students were not afraid to use English to communicate. Going over Miss A's class and evaluating it for the criteria my group had developed, I first looked at the social justice criteria we set, which was if she used multicultural elements in her lesson. She did not, but I also felt that this did not hinder her lesson. The second criteria also asked how she split up her time. As we can tell from the lesson breakdown, she was able to accomplish quite a lot during her short 40-minute class while retaining student interest and building on what they know. The use of a warm-up, songs, labeling activities, and learning centers helped her manage all these tasks effectively. The third criteria asked if the materials she presented were appropriate for her students' level. From the class observation, I can state a resounding yes, as the map for the labeling activity was simplified and colorful, and the Ocean Trade song was suitable and not too fast. She also stopped the song during certain parts to go over it with students to gather feedback on their understanding and help them retain the information given out by the song. Some words during journal writing, such as president, were confusing to the students at first, but she explained it clearly, and the students showed understanding of these terms by the end of the lesson. However, the Math Learning Center seemed too easy. Some students said it was easy peasy, or I know this already. However, this topic was probably chosen by the school curriculum and not the teacher herself, and she did do her best to make it more fun and interactive through the use of the bag and blocks to test probability. The fourth criteria asked if the teacher demonstrated the ability to keep the students engaged. Simply put, yes, students were attentive and focused, especially during songs. Miss A always had something happening to keep the students working, whether it be a song, a prompted question, or another activity. She also used rhymes like look at me, look at you, to get the students' attention in a friendly and effective manner. Unfortunately, some students grew bored or lost focus during the centers, though as many of them seemed to enjoy the interactive activities more than the required desk work. Nonetheless, the lack of interest and focus could also have been attributed to the fact that it was almost lunchtime, and the students may have been getting hungry. Criteria 5 asks, how does the educator check for understanding? Throughout the lesson, Miss A would check for understanding through simple question prompts, such as, what does endangered mean? To which the students would raise their hand and try to explain for the rest of the class. It was simple, yet surprisingly effective, as she always got at least 2 to 4 students raising her hand every time she asked who would volunteer to explain. The final criteria for the lesson asks, are the objectives of the lesson clearly explained or viewable to students? Though the objectives were clearly explained, Miss A did miss an opportunity to display them on the whiteboard somewhere for the class. However, as the class did move around a bit during class, she may have opted not to do this, as the objectives may have not been visible the whole time. However, this is uncertain and just a theory. During the debriefing, Miss A and I discussed closely the different expectations, as well as the positives and areas of improvement for the lesson. Through our discussion, I praised her ability to maintain student interest and motivation, as well as the sheer amount of different interactive activities she presented during the lesson. She had already taught several lessons earlier that day before the class I observed, so I was captivated by her ability to remain cheerful and energetic. I did mention that her use of praise and positive reinforcement, as well as the use of group and individual work, all within such a short time, showed me her ability to manage her classroom and time both rather effectively. My only disappointment came from her slow startup of the PC, a rather small nitpick, I admit, and the somewhat weak transition from the warm-up to the learning centers, mainly the Math Learning Center. Miss A confessed that her lesson was actually much more disorganized than I personally had thought, and that her class objective was something else completely different that she had forgotten to implement. She told me that she wanted to discuss different ocean zones with her students, but either through the nervousness of my presence or simple absent-mindedness, she had forgotten and developed the patchwork lesson that I saw. To me, this would explain why some of the activities did not seem to relate well to each other. My recommendation for Miss A in her future class is to perhaps write down the class objective before class, not only to help the students understand the lesson, but also help her remember as well and prevent further issues like this. Though she preps a lot before class, I feel something small like this would be very beneficial to her and her students in the future. The teacher, Miss A, did a wonderful job maintaining student focus and engaging the students. She used her materials well, and the variety of materials helped to keep all the students interested. The amount of positive encouragement was also a plus. The energy in the class did start to fade as the class went on, so maybe trying to keep a balanced level of energy in the classroom would be beneficial. Having the objectives displayed and reflecting back on them during and at the end of class would also have helped. Overall, I felt that I learned a lot from this observation, mostly in regards to material use and student engagement. Despite the short class time, Miss A was able to divide her time wisely and present many different activities with many different materials and resources. Despite some small issues, she overall displayed a strong level of management, and the activities flowed and transitioned fairly well considering the issues she had. Some more work could be done to transition into the learning centers though, but this was something out of the teacher's control. In the end, I felt students' overall high level of participation and energy, especially during the start of class, showed the success of the lesson.